Okay, so on page 118, there's discussion on warping that perspective grid with a fisheye lens. And you can see from the 4 photographs there what that does to your grid. And so I just want to recap that a bit. Let's use a marker here so we can see. Typically when you take a photograph, your lens is always centered on the image, right? Because of the nature of pointing your camera. And so your scene is going to be looking like this through the viewfinder. And what you need to consider is that a fisheye lens has a curve to it. So what I mean by that is that here's your, let's say here's your camera, here's your lens, okay, and you look through it, right, your line of sight goes through that, and then this is very, very curved, the actual lens, and so what it allows you to do is it bends that line of sight through here, and it pokes out like this, and allows you to see in all directions, okay, coming out of that curved lens. So if you put, then this is called like a hemispherical or a spherical lens. There's a lot of curvature. So a fisheye lens is going to let you see a lot of the scene. So you're going to be looking up, down, left, right. So what that does is it curves your grid. It bends it basically and allows you to see a lot of a scene. So if you point a fisheye lens dead center like that at a scene, just like in the photographs you see, it creates a grid where the horizon will stay straight if your lens is centered on the horizon. Okay, and then verticals, as they move left and right of the center of your image, start to curve. And they're curving around, basically, like they're curving around that hemispherical lens. And then your horizon line, as it moves above and below, guidelines up here are going to curve at the same pace. And so what happens is when we get all the way zoomed back out, we basically have a circle. So that by the time these verticals over here match up with that horizontal up there, basically it becomes part of a big circle. And that's when you see fisheye lens photographs taken with a full sensor back, you'll see that it all bends into a circle. So that's called curvilinear perspective. And you can sketch a grid just like that, and then all your, if your vanishing points, if your lens is centered on the image, which it always is when you take the photograph, any lines that are converging, straight lines that are converging out to that vanishing point actually stay straight. They do not bend because they're pointing at the same position, right, as your lens center. Nice guideline there, huh? Okay, and so then if you were to draw a scene here, you'd say, well, there's my street. Okay, it's bending like this. And you can have varying amounts of this curvilinear perspective, right, depending on how spherical your lens is. And so let's say if we have to go through a doorway, it's a hallway, and then, oh, I said it was a road, but now it's not a road, now it's a walkway. We'll go through a door. And if we had the other door, another door over here, maybe, and then you can use the same height. The problem is you can't just transfer straight across parallel to the horizon. You've got to actually start to use curved lines. So it gets a little bit tricky. Let's say if we're going to put a person in this space, they're also curved to match. Okay, your vertical is curved way out over here. Okay, so let me just draw a little bit darker over the top of this. So if you have your image frame, okay, and you point your lens out at the horizon, dead center, your guideline is going to start to bend. Now, where this gets a little bit funky, and you can have fun with it, and the sketches on page 119 actually do this. The sketches on 119 actually aren't centered on this vanishing point, where, right, if we had that doorway over here, it would use that bent guideline, and it would kind of all make sense because we would see lines bending, we'd see even a figure standing in the space was bending. Okay, so that would all kind of start to make sense, and see, as long as it's all relative and bending that way. But the images on the sketches on the next page are different, and how they're different is that they're a crop of this. So if you look at the sketch at the bottom of page 119, what you're going to see is that the horizon, right, is not in the center of the image. The horizon's actually really low. So that sketch has actually been cropped. So the horizon's very low in the sketch. Vanishing point's a little bit off center even. And I'm actually working in a frame like that. Okay? Now this is the difference between like shooting video with a hemispherical fisheye lens, that, you know, the center of your lens is always going to be at the center of this image. But when you're doing a sketch, you can always imagine it's a photographic effect, like a fisheye lens, and then you can choose to crop it. So you can choose to build and draw within that wherever you like. So now I could have a structure here coming forward, and then I would use this grid to go upward like that, and then maybe drop it down into the distance and hit the ground plane, maybe some mountains off over there. And you see it's part of the same grid as the one with the person standing here. All right, then maybe we keep going out of frame even. So that's how those buildings were drawn. Right, and then I've got this curving and curving even more when we get way up in here. And so I just sort of built these, followed my guidelines, built these warped buildings, drew these warped buildings that move around that space. So that's why those sketches look so funny, is because they're very, very distorted. And maybe I'll just shade the underside a couple of these, so we can see the convergence, see the grid working. So you can see if I drew this using this as my original image size, then my vanishing point, right, and my grid distortion would be set up here in the middle. But that's not the case. It's actually my horizon straight way down here. It's because this was the original image, it was this large, and then what I chose to draw in my sketch was only this part, right, ignoring all the rest of this. So that's more sort of a photographic effect, right, like a fisheye lens, just like in the photographs on this page, and then using that photographic effect in an illustration or in a sketch to make those sketches more interesting, and to have fun with cropping a larger image and using a different perspective grid, right, really mostly for dramatic effect. If you're trying to be really clear about communicating, it would be more like the photographs on the left page. But on the right page, if you want to have fun with it, get a little bit of perspective distortion, this is how you can still draw accurately in that kind of distorted space. So, hope that helps, and give it a try. It's a lot of fun.